Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to take on a relatively rare, less popular reel. It's the Penn Formula 10 kg. It's an international size lever drag reel that is got a graphite or a plastic case or hard case, and not the traditional metal cases that you would see on the Gold Internationals. This one a lot of times has been referred to as the poor man's International. It's a nice reel. It's got a heavy-duty case. It weighs a lot. It's designed for trolling, and in this case, the owner, Lenny, has braid on there. So I'm sure this one's been put to good use. So it's a relatively rare one. I don't get to work on it too much. So one of the first things I suggest, if you're like me and you want to see what's going to happen as you take the reel apart, go ahead and pull the schematic. Now this schematic is for the 10 kg. It's available through mysticparts.com, and if you find any broken pieces and parts in there as you go about your repair, most of these parts are still available. So I would recommend getting an orientation as to what's going to happen before you get in there, and that way it makes the repair and the servicing just a little bit easier. So we're going to start by taking off the exterior pieces. And you start with the handle, and the handle is held down by two screws on a little knob here that enables you to shift the two speeds, high and low. And there's two screws that hold that in. So as I start to take this apart, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel, everybody involved in keeping us safe during the pandemic. Your service, your dedication, and what you do is just so important and so appreciated. Thank you. I just can't help but notice that there's 100,000 people in hospitals these days suffering from the Delta variant, and you're making their lives easier and trying to restore them to health. So thank you for everything that you do. All right, there's two screws. I want to get these out of here before they fall out of here. And then there's a nut behind this one, and that holds the handle on, and it holds the shift gear. This is the shift gear. It holds that on as well. Generally speaking, I use just an adjustable wrench. There's two flat sides on the piece that's underneath. I like to break that nut, and as soon as I break that nut, it will screw out. So if you wondering how to do that, that's how you're going to get the handle off. You'll see that we have a handle screw there. We have this adjuster, and it's held in by a C-clip. If you want to pull that point out, go ahead and do that. I'm simply going to put a little bit of oil on there where it rides in and out of the sleeve, and I'm going to put that into a parts tray. It's the bottom of a jug, and that parts tray is also going to hold those two screws that I was using for that handle assembly. Next off then is the handle. Notice that the cup came off with it, but there's a cup that rides underneath that. And this one's been oiled. You can see that there's a film of oil on there. I'll take that old oil off of there, clean this up. And it's important when you're doing a reel, particularly one that you don't know, not only to pull that schematic, but also take pictures along the way. Those will be your reference points if you get lost in the disassembly of this. All right, next up then, we're going to remove this outer shield. That's got two more screws that are holding that in. It also has the adjuster. And when I do my removal of the pieces and parts, I like to make sure that we are in free spool on the lever drag. I don't like to work on a reel with it out of position. And also it'll give me a cue about where the setup is for the ramp when I go to reinstall. Okay, these are kind of machine screw setups. They're not finely threaded, they're machine screws. Important to note, as you go back into your basket, you want to make sure you know where each belongs. And then this should lift off at this point. There we go. That'll take that retainer off. This should come out now. You pull up and then you screw it out. Then we have a little plastic piece. I'm not sure if that's the whole arm or if that's the ramp. It should be a ramp, I think. Yeah, that's the nut holding this in. This is always good to kind of take your pieces and parts and stack them as how they came out. Next up, then, we should be able to remove the arm. And again, I'm looking for clues here about how to go and reinstall this piece. So we should be, the rest of that is the case, so there's nothing more going on there. 1, 2, 3, 4 screws that have to come off next. Make sure you have the appropriate screwdriver. You'll notice I just changed screwdrivers there. The slot on the screws is a little wider than the other screwdriver I was using. That's why I've changed that. These have gone back to a machine screw. And what I like to do as I take these off is to make sure that the size and length of the screws and everything about them is the same. If they're not, I notice where the position is on these screws so that we can go to reinstall. Okay, the 2 bottom screws are the same. That's also where pictures become helpful, because if you didn't take a picture here and you found out that you had different size screws, well, then you might be installing one in the wrong place. This is a longer screw. It also has the collar on it. That goes in one of the posts. And we should have the same setup on this post. So if you like the art of reel repair, if you like working on your own reels, keeping them tuned up and the like, then I do a lot of that on my channel, and I would recommend that you subscribe to it to see the videos that I post and to learn more about how fishing reels are made. If you subscribe, please hit the notification button. Thank you to all the folks that have done that over the past 3 years. We've just hit the 14,000 number. And I really do appreciate you keeping this channel vibrant as you watch to see how these reels are done. All right, so we noticed that the 2 screws below are very short. The 2 above go through to hold that harness lug on. So good point to note that as well. But please subscribe, and if you subscribe, that notification button will let you know when I am posting new videos. And if those are videos that you enjoy seeing, well, go ahead and watch them. And if it's something that you don't foresee yourself ever having an opportunity to work on or want to understand more about, well, that's okay too. I work on vintage reels, and a lot of folks are just interested in the more contemporary ones. That's okay. Please, it's for your enjoyment. Watch it as you can. All right, we have a hard case now. This one should come across and out. Oh. Now, I was starting to pull that off, and I noticed that there was resistance. So the first thing I did was turn around and look on the back side of this reel. And sure enough, there's 2 more screws that are holding that in. And these are very small screws. So again, a good picture. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, as they say. A good picture will tell you where they belong, so that when you go to reinstall, you'll know where they are. Rod tied down here. It's kind of in the way of me getting these screws out. That's one. Another one should come out as well. I don't like to leave them in the reel bodies because they get jolted, and the next thing you know, they get gone. So now we should be able to remove this. There we go. And that is your double gear side, and as you can tell, we have 2 gears, a high and a low gear. We have a lot of dried grease on there, and it's time to just give this one a good cleaning and get this one all serviced up here. A lot of reel repair is all about just cleaning up the reels and making sure that they stay clean as you work on them. Okay, I'm going to remove the three screws here that are holding this on. Then we should be able to push the other side out. may need the handle for this. Yep. Some of the tricks you learn, right? These are very small screws. If you put them on your table like that, just remember that they can get easily knocked to the side. So if you have a question on any reel, not just this one, but if you have a question on this one or any reel, you can leave that in the comments section, and I will try to answer those questions for you if I know the answer. I don't know the answer to everything, but I will try my best to kind of guide you along if I do know. Those three are going into the side. Okay, pause the video for a moment because I was unsure. I went back to look at my schematic, which I recommend everybody do. And to remove that main gear now, you want to take the spring out of the core. That's going to allow you to shift. And there's a screw underneath here that's going to be holding that main gear in. So sometimes you can unscrew that with your hand, and sometimes you can't. So let's see if we can't get that screw out. Feels like it's coming out. Yep, we're loose. We should be able to remove the gearing now. Takes a little patience. You have to go figure out what the right answer is. All right, next up, this one just simply comes out. It's got a couple of studs that ride into the bigger gear, so you want to just be careful with that. When that came out, the spring on the screw came out. And then I've gone ahead just a little bit because I had to find my right tool. There's a snap ring that holds the main gear on. So just complete that. I have this mini set of snap ring tools. Good to keep those together. Now we can remove the big gear and push the little gear, push the pinion through. Remove the main gear, and we're all set for our cleaning of the gear side. So that's it's not an easy task, but it's not something that's beyond anybody to do. It does require a little bit of patience, and it does require a little bit of advanced warning or knowledge of the deal. All right, I'm going to oil that bearing there. Give it a good soak while we go on and clean the rest of this up. I'm just going to use a little bit of WD-40 as a degreaser. So much about reel service and repair is just about cleaning, parts inspection, and just re-lubrication. It's kind of that simple. And of course, if you find a broken part along the way, well, that's where the part comes in about the repair as opposed to the service. Something's failing. All right, so we've just taken care of this. Cleaned the main gear. Let's go ahead and clean the secondary gear here. You want to check these gears. These are pretty strong gears. They're pretty much stainless, I would think, at this point. They look that way. The amazing part about this reel is they can still be found out on the web pretty inexpensively. And I think the value here is just incredible. If you're looking for an occasional trolling reel, you don't need the metal side-plated international for most trolling applications. Of course, you need it if you're going big tuna or something. But I've seen these as inexpensively as $75 on the web. And the reason for that is because these reels are pretty much heavy and bulky. And I got a comment before, who needs bulky or heavy, or who cares about it if it's in a rod holder the whole time. But a lot of these have been replaced by the simplicity of the smaller format of vets and the like that have come with the advent of braid. That's kind of what, that old song said, video killed the radio star. Well, in this case, I think braid's killed the market for some of these bigger reels. Particularly if you're going inshore trolling, you can get a reel with a lot of braid capacity on it. And of course, in this case, Lenny's got braid on here. But you can get a smaller formatted one that has pretty much high capacity braid applications for a lot less than the cost of an international, that's for sure. And I think that's probably what's obsoleted these. Now this This one has the advantage of being a 2-speed reel. That's not necessarily the case. The single-speed reels really are just, well, they're not a dime a dozen, but they're relatively inexpensive. All right, we're going to just reassemble this. We've cleaned all of that. We've oiled the bearing. I'm going to grease those gears in a moment. We're going to put a little bit of grease onto the shaft here, the main shaft. I'm going to put that back in now. And next up then would be the main gear. We want to get grease onto the outside of the teeth there. We've checked all of these. This reel, I do pre-test the reels when I go to service reel. I want to see if there's anything identifiable early on in the cranking of it. Sometimes the free spool doesn't release. Sometimes there's a sticking gear going from first to second gear, that kind of thing. So you want to do your best to determine if that's the problem or if there's a problem with those before you go too much further. There's that snap ring. I'm not sure if I can start that by just using my finger pressure. We'll try that first. There's a little balancing act with snap rings, so if I can, there you go, we could probably get this one on without even using the plier. Once you, getting it off is the trick. Yep, we're in there now. That's the holding. All right, a little bit of grease onto the back side. These will pull out when you do the shift from first to second, or low to high gear, if you will. Going to get the same grease onto the teeth here. So each of these reels kind of have the same personality from or DNA from a lever drag standpoint. And as long as you kind of have the concept down, the rest of it is generally just kind of the same regardless of whose lever drag you're working on. I just did an Okuma Titus, and it was pretty much the same thing. All right, those melded in. All right, that center pin acts as a couple of pieces to this. I like to put the screws in at this point before I put that center screw through. So we go into our basket tray and we find those 3 small screws that belong to that piece. And we go ahead and install those. Now it's a little dangerous leaving that one center pin screw in there, but I'm going to just keep my eye on it, make sure I don't brush it out of the way as I work on this reel. Always dangerous. And once we finish with this gear side, we'll be able to go over and deal with the spool side, which has your drag system in it. Okay, those are that, and now we got to bring this pin back in. It's got a screw you got to push down to compress the spring, and then you got to turn the screw to load it in. And now you can see how that screw, the point of that screw is back here, and that's holding this assembly in. So if you were wrestling with this in any way, shape, or form, you now know why you were wrestling with it. That assembly is done. Put that over on the side. I don't need to put that in my tray, simply because it's too big and probably won't lose that along the way. Let's take the spool assembly out then. There's nothing going on in the back of this reel. All there is a holder for the back end of this assembly, and there's a little click button up there that's going to run on these teeth here. That's it. All right. Generally speaking, you have 2 things you want to do, and again, I'm not that familiar with this reel. We're going to pull this off. That should give us some access to the back bearings here, and you're going to want to unscrew this to get at the drag system on this side. These reels are kind of built that way. Usually you can do this by hand pressure. Just follow the piece that says unscrew. It says unscrew it in this direction. That'll take the rim off. That'll take the pressure plate and the gear assembly off. That shows you that we have a decent drag in here. We have a bearing underneath that drag. We have another clip under there that's holding that in. And then on the back side of this, we should have the other piece that holds the shaft. Again, I'm going to let those fall on my table, but I'm going to be aware of those. They look like they have some kind of a Loctite on there. And the purpose of doing this is to get to those bearings. You want to oil those bearings. Check the drag strength. The drag washers look fine on this one. So just take this cover off here. Just checking the washer. This is a replaceable washer. This isn't a one-sided washer. So you want to check the back side of this. Get this lubed up here. I'm going to see if I can get this little clip off. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Okay, once again, it's taken a little bit of effort for me to find the right tool. I finally found it on another one of my pieces. But I've loosened that up. Now I'm going to pull that all the way up. Don't want to lose this one. I don't want to lose any pieces on this reel, but that's an important piece. Now we can push our gear shaft, our spool shaft through. That's going to give me access. We can actually knock both of these bearings out as well. And we can clean the back of our spool. Using a paper towel. I vote for the least abrasive of any of the pieces. I like to make sure that they're nice and clean. This is nothing but a holder here. We have the bigger bearing below. Monster bearings. I oil bearings. I've gotten a question from time to time, why do you oil and not grease? Well, to me, oil and grease are pretty much the same, except for the lasting power. I like the oil because it's a little more slippery. I like the oil because it doesn't attract as much dirt and doesn't retain or hold as much. And I like the oil because even if it evaporates, it doesn't tend to damage the reel, where the grease, if it goes unattended and dries, it impacts the performance of the reel. And ultimately, it will attract dirt and could lead to the grind and some of the other issues that you experience. So I tend to flood the bearings. I use a fishing reel oil. In this case, I'm using Reel X. We're going to just, again, use I like the paper towels. They don't transfer the dirt from one surface to another. They're disposable. And at the end of the day, to me, they are well worth the effort there. Okay, we're going to put that other bearing back in. This is an HT100 drag. Now, there's two thoughts on that. You can go ahead and put some grease on there. And if you do, you simply want to put just a small amount on there on the surface and wipe any excess off. Another approach is to just make sure that the channels are clear. Use a brush, and you can see I'm just, whatever dirt might have been in there is already coming right off the path. And you can do that on the other side. I'm using a wire brush, but I'm using it very lightly, just to clean up any kind of dried greases that may have been on that surface. All right, that goes back on here. We want to take our axle shaft and go through with that. And at this point, we could put a little bit of grease on there. There's not much going on. It's just going to be riding right on that bearing collar there and right on the bearing collar here. So go ahead and get some grease there. The internal side of the axle shaft, there's not much going on at all. And I can go grab that clip again. We know it slides up after it gets down to that groove. So again, we'll try and do this by finger, you don't need to necessarily use a snap ring plier to put it back in. Spins nicely. Go ahead and go grab the lock plate here. Center those. We have our 4 screws. When I put the screws in, I like to make sure that I'm on each side, kind of northeast, southwest. That way it gives me even pressure and I don't get out of skew with the centering of the holes. So there's a lot that goes onto this, but this reel does a lot of fishing. And so you want to make sure that as you fish it, that you don't forget about it, or you just don't say, oh my gosh, I got 30 minutes or so of servicing this reel, I'll put it off for another day. And then you find out that one of your bearings seizes, or you get dirt in the main gears and it's not an efficient transfer from high to low, or something else happens because you didn't have the time. This is truly a case where staying ahead of it on service will undoubtedly reward you. These reels are made for big fish, and you wouldn't want to lose a big fish because you didn't stop and take a moment to service the reel. All right, so we have a pressure plate here, and we have another bearing inside. We want to oil that bearing again. Give it a healthy drink. Use that clean towel. You can see that there's some surface grease and dirt that's wiping off of that. You can see how it came off. And then we can go ahead and clean up the backside. After we've cleaned that, we want to take that spring, make sure that that spring goes back onto the axle shaft, and we can install our pressure plate, and we can put our pressure plate tie down. Remember, this one had a sign that says unscrew to clockwise, so you want to turn it towards you or counterclockwise to reset that. And it's under tension. Hand tighten, that's all you need to do there. Give it a turn, make sure that you're operating the way you should. Axle shaft is turning beautifully. We can go ahead and put that back into the carrier now. I want to make sure that that braid stays out of the way and does not get trapped in the case. Happens too frequently. Okay, just turn it until you set that hex nut into the side plate. This side is done. So now it's just a matter of putting the balance together. We have our main gear. We want to align our side plate. Hold pressure on that as you go to put some screws in. And so the screws that don't involve the lever are the 2 top ones that hold in the harness slugs, and the 2 bottom ones, which are outside of that. So those are good places to start, north and south. I like to do that to keep equal pressure on the reel as I go from about tightening these down. Grab the small one, which we know, so let's go opposite that one there. All right, come back up top here, do this one. We're getting to the end of this one. So patience, a little bit of practice. Go ahead and make sure when you do this that you pull a schematic. If you have any doubts about what you're doing, stop, take a look. Make sure that you go back to your pictures. I hope you were taking pictures. Go back to your pictures. If you need a reference point, a visual. And in the end, you will be successful. It's not that hard to do these, but you gotta have a plan. They say, plan your work and work your plan. All right, the 2 small ones went in the back. Okay, now we got our trim rings and accessories for the balance of this. Next up then is the trim ring. Remember, we had the two exterior pieces to this. There's a hole, so it's hard to set this one up backwards. Alright, next up then, you want to get the carrier from the free spool arm. You want to get that little white adjuster. It's got the hex on it. You want to align the carrier with the pyramids and the adjuster so that they line up and you're near that free spool part of the assembly. I left this a little bit left this unscrewed a little bit so that I can move the carrier out and get that arm on. There we go. That's your arm assembly. Now, if you recall, we had our screw button here that's going to tighten that down. That's the preset. Okay. Last part up then was the cover. That goes like that. We have the two screws that we took off for the cover. Remember, those are the ones I said look like machine screws as opposed to threaded screws. You can always go back and check your pictures if you had any question on that. One more there. Coming down to two more parts and a handle, and that'll be the end of the game. Okay, spring goes inside the carrier. Collar goes over. Handle goes on. Speed shifter and handle screw go on next. Most of this can get tightened down by hand. Eventually your screw, the handle screw, will separate from the adjuster. Then you need to get the view of where is the holes in the handle to accept the screws from the tie down. That's almost it. Once you do that, then you can line up your adjuster. We're not lined there. Almost. A little bit of patience. This goes off camera, it's because I need a little bit more strength. Okay. So we're set there. Next up then is to grab a screw and get it into the holes of the speed adjuster knob. Not quite sure what they call it. Line it with the So just finishing tightening up that last screw. There we go. Check to make sure that the button is operational. Push it in. One gear. Hit the button. Pop it out. Second gear. That's working. We should be in free spool because that's the way we set it up. Let's make sure that our free spool is turning without moving the handle. Let's go ahead and move it up the chain here. We now have an operational reel that's turning fine. Make sure that we can get over to max drag. And we can. Again, test your single gear versus your double gear. Hit your release point to get into the high. And that's it. That's your Formula 10 Penn 10G. Poor man's international beautiful reel. Ready to go fishing again. So I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a while, but these reels take time. And I hope you learned something about the mechanics of one of these reels, some of the interesting little tools that you may need along the way, how to take these apart, how to service them, how to get them back out there fishing again. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.